So everyone, thank you. I'm Jeff Hopkins, Procter & Gamble. I lead our PLM implementation, digital transformation as part of our digital innovation organization. And I'm going to talk to you today about, there we go, leading digital transformation. And so I just want to ask a question. How many of you, as part of the scope of your role, have the responsibility of driving digital transformation in your company? Okay, so pretty big group. So the premise of this is going to be a little bit different talk than you probably get at this symposium or in other symposiums. There's a lot of great talks on how to leverage the tool to drive your business, and we have a lot of great examples of digital twin, digital thread, and how we're using the 3D experience to drive our business and drive superior innovation, productivity, and cost, all those kinds of things. But what I find is been lacking at some of these is really the discussion of what I think is the bigger challenge, which is how do you drive an organization, how do you drive transformation across the organization? And so I wanted to give that talk today instead of kind of what we're doing on the platform from a technology side. So it's going to be a little bit of a different talk. I'd love to get some feedback on it as throughout the day. So because this is such a meaty, this is slow, okay, I'm going to step back here. Because this is such a meaty topic, I've cut out all slides except for one slide on the intro for the company, because I think most of you know Procter & Gamble. And I want to kind of present this in the context of the other things that are going on in the other industries that you're hearing today. So we focused our portfolio into 10 categories and 65 brands. Hopefully they're brands that you look around your house and you see every day and that you use every day. If you think about the contrast, what we're dealing with from a design standpoint to a lot of what you see here in Aero, automotive, or AEC, there you have few products that are developed each year, but they have very complicated BOMs, right? Lots of materials, lots of parts, and that. We're at the other end of the spectrum. We will launch in the tens of thousands, the high tens of thousands new products each year around the globe. And those high tens of thousands products that we launch each year will generate the need for 500,000 to 1 million new parts that we'll be creating in the 3D experience every year. And so that leads us to, we actually do have one of the largest, if not the largest, databases today. And so as we get into this, I gotta keep bending over here. I wanted to talk to you about a little bit, just real quickly, the business context for driving digital transformation. What's going on in the company, internally, externally, and some of those things. And the first thing is, for about the past decade, our business model has been under attack, right? Digitization is really a challenge to our business model. We're trying to enable it and use it for our business model, but if you look at the way that consumers become aware of our products, the way that consumers purchase our products, the way that consumers experience our products, all that has changed. And it's changing dramatically, and the change is accelerating, and it's a real challenge for us. How do we turn that from a threat to an opportunity? That's a real challenge for us. We're also seeing that stakeholders, whether it's regulatory agencies or it's customers or even consumers, they're demanding more and higher quality data from us because they want to use that data to drive their business processes. And so that's another challenge for us, or an opportunity for us. And then many of you have probably seen in the news, we've been driving a consolidation and a focus in our business from, we've divested some pretty big businesses to focus on these 10 core categories and 65 brands. And so we're doing digital transformation in the context of a broader business transformation. And let me tell you, that brings a special kind of challenge to this work. Internally, as we look at what we need to do to succeed, we need to innovate at the pace of the market. And there's some things in the way that we have been working that we're changing that have been holding us back. So one of them is having these sequential disconnected work processes. And the gentleman from McDermott talked about this, right? Moving from sequential to parallel knowledge-driven processes. That's what they were trying to do with the 3D experience. That's what we're doing with the 3D experience. Running the business on email and spreadsheets, right? As I came into this role, that's what you find. Like, we're running the business on email and spreadsheets. And I said, I knew that we would have succeeded in our transformation when folks come in the morning, they boot up their computer and they go to Enovia or they go to 3D Experience, because that's where their work is, that's where their data is. And we're getting very close to that milestone. Then we're doing a ton of manual data entry, and I think a lot of folks suffer from this. Obviously, this is a loss on the business. It's not value added. It can lead to quality issues, and we want to reduce that. Obviously, collaboration is also important. So we hit a tipping point a couple years ago, and if you remember the talk from Craig this morning, he talked about Matrix 1 and how old that was. Well, CSS is even older than Matrix 1, and this was the spec system that we were on. So we'd been in the 3D experience since the early 2000s, and we're using CATIA, we're using Ingenuity, we're using a lot of the BIOVIA platforms in the business. But what we had done is we had linked our old spec system into Innovia as the system of record, and we'd built this bridge. But the progress of really getting everybody over into the 3D experience was just too slow. I said, this has taken us too long, we need to accelerate our transformation. And so we had a conversation with our leadership, and by the way, you don't ever want to do this. This is a very bad idea, don't do this. But we had a conversation with our leadership where I sat down and said, this bridge was meant to last 2 years. We're 3 years in, and it looks like we got 3 years to go at our current pace. I either need to get you across the bridge, or we need to build a new bridge. And so what do you want to do? And to their credit, leadership said, we want to get across the bridge, so take us there. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we did that. I'm just going to say I got a lot of builds, so I'm going to step behind this. And we followed a lot of traditional organizational change management, and for those of you who are kind of into organization change management, if you haven't read the book Leading Change by Kotter, that's a great one. It came out in '96, still relevant today, great book. And a lot of this is kind of out of that playbook. So the first thing we did was engage senior leaders to declare that this was a priority, and this went all the way up through our chief technical officer, chief manufacturing officer, all the way up to the CEO, and they kind of cascaded it down. We had all these videos of them saying, thou shalt do this kind of thing. That was very helpful. One of the things we did that's a little different in big companies that I think was really important is we were very clear that this was PLM and digital innovation is a business strategy. And so this is a business strategy, and the businesses need to lead the transformation. Corporate would enable it, but the businesses needed to lead the transformation. And part of leading the transformation was paying for the transformation. And so the BU presidents and their R&D counterparts had to come up with the funding to fund this, and they had to put the resources in their business to drive the transformation. And that was really critical. Having them all have skin in the game, that they were accountable then to their presidents for driving the value of this proposition was really critical. And then probably the other critical thing that we did was we put a schedule, and we put a no-miss date that each of the businesses agreed to that, yes, we're going to be across the bridge, we're going to be into the 3D experience by this date. And it got rolled up to a digital master plan that was one of the top priorities for the company that our CEO was monitoring. And in fact, the progress on those projects was tied to people's bonuses for the past couple years. So your bonus, this project impacted your bonus. And so I like to tell people, this is when I got my t-shirt, my favorite t-shirt. And underneath this dress shirt, I had this t-shirt in all these meetings, and it said, I'm not optional, right? Now I use that for good, not for ill. Mike will attest to that, right? But when you get into these tough conversations of folks saying, hey, I don't like this design, or I want this to be different, we can say, well, we can talk about that, but we have to talk about that in the context of your organization is committed to this date, and if we're going to change this date, we need to go back to David Taylor and tell him why we can't change this date. So is this change really that important, right? And how can we get to good enough instead of waiting till it's perfect? Because that's the problem we were falling into. Folks wanted it to be perfect before they moved, and it's like, we can't do that. So then you continue, you engage the mid-level leaders. So we had a digital leader in each business that we worked with that led the transformation strategy for that particular business. So we worked very closely with them. But I look for every opportunity to connect with my peers in internal symposiums, in lead team meetings, whatever, to talk to them. And I said, this is a business-led transformation, which means you are accountable for leading your organization through this transformation. I can't lead this organization through this transformation. You need to do it, and that means you need to be prepared to do it. You need to have the mindset to do it, and you need to make sure you have the right people on your team who have the mindset to drive this as well. Because a lot of times when we get to sort of the key contacts they wanted us to work with, it was people who were very familiar in the old way of doing things, and they were great for kicking the tires on the thing, but they didn't really have the mindset. Many of them didn't have the mindset to really drive the transformation we needed. And then we engaged the users. First thing we did is we chartered a change network, and I'll have a little bit more about that in the video coming up. We provided a lot of training and education, and I want to be training and education are two different things, and they're both critical, right? So we would do the training, click here, do this, follow this work process, but we also did these things called design education sessions where my design team would take folks through and explain to them why was this designed, what's the work process, what's the intent, why is it designed the way that it's designed, how does it work, all those sorts of things. And then we also created we have a very defined, a very deliberate hypercare process for managing the change as we roll out new capability. I could spend a whole talk on that, so I'm not going to get that into detail, but if anybody wants to talk about that more, I'd be happy to later in the day. So I got a brief video here, just to example of one of the communications we would do on the program. So I'm pleased to say we were successful in this transformation, so we got everybody across the bridge. I got the last report out just a couple weeks ago with a big old fat old 0 on users in the old system, and we're going to shut that down. I did want to say, we use Innovia and 3D Experience synonymously. I know that's wrong, but we kind of got started on Innovia, and it's hard to rebrand in the middle of a transformation, so apologies for that. So I want to switch gears just a little bit and wrap up with School of Hard Knocks, having been through this for the past couple years. I had this question of, is traditional organization change management sufficient to drive this kind of transformation? And also kind of a parallel question, why is digital so much harder than other organization transformation, right? And so I want to explore that with you. I just got a couple slides here on this, and then we'll take some questions. So I had the opportunity to talk with Professor Kane, who's at Boston College. He works with the MIT, works with Deloitte Digital and the MIT Sloan School of Business on a digital maturity report. Their latest report just came out. The URL link's down there. You can search for it. Highly recommend you reading it. It just came out. It's really good, some metrics on digital maturity. And he had this, we're talking about this thing on organization change management, and he had this analogy I thought was really good. He said, digital is like the cyclone in The Wizard of Oz. It comes tearing through the landscape. It transports people to a new place that looks very unfamiliar and kind of plops them down, right? He said, but the story in the movie, it's not about the cyclone, but you couldn't have the movie without the cyclone, right? The movie is about Dorothy's journey into Oz and learning to love Oz. And you might say, well, wait a second, doesn't this analogy fall down? Because the whole movie is about Dorothy wanting to go back to Kansas, right? And I think it's an excellent point, right? And what you find is that that's a very real thing that you deal with digital transformation. I can't tell you how many meetings I sat in where people were like, can't you make it look like the old system, right? Or variations of that theme. And so he says, it's really amazing if you look at the movie, and it's this parallel to digital, is how stark the two worlds are, right? Kansas is in black and white. Oz is in Technicolor. I think it was actually one of the first color movies. And he says, and that sort of transformation is very, very challenging for organizations, because people can't really, when they're in Kansas and it's black and white, they can't really envision what life is going to be like in Oz, right? And so you kind of have to get there a bit to understand it, and you got to have people to help you underway, and I'll build on that theme as we go. As we go forward. But with digital transformation, once people get there, they don't want to go back. And so, get them there, get them settled, they're not going to want to go back. And so that's a bit of the story on that. And so it got me thinking to this question of why is digital harder? Why is digital transformation harder? And I'll just give you a couple thoughts, and I'm just trying to figure this out, and maybe it's a group discussion, but I certainly think one element of it is there's so much coming at people so fast. So many new acronyms: IoT, ALM, PLM, data engineering, data science, AI, model-based design. All of this is just coming at them. And there's a group of people that have decided that their strategy to deal with digital is to retire before it hits, right? Especially at big companies where you have people who have been there a long time, right? Their strategy is retire before. I keep telling them, you waited too long. If you're still here, you waited too long. And so I think that's one of the reasons. So brings up this question then, what do you need for people to be successful? And so continuing with the analogy a little bit, just bear with me here. I'm just having some fun. We're allowed to have fun here, right? Is what I think the biggest secret sauce to driving digital transformation is mindset. Number 1, 2, 3, it's mindset. And so exploring that kind of mindset question, in the theme is, what did the scarecrow needed? He needed a brain, right? So what is that about? We had a whole talk this morning on, improving your skills, learning new technologies. And I think it's incumbent on leaders to dig in and understand these things. They're not that hard, right? Part of why this feels so hard is because, frankly, the industry, so apologies to the folks, but they make it feel like, it's kind of like the Oz and the Wizard of Oz. It makes it feel like magic, right? It's not magic. It's not that hard. And so I think making it seem like magic is a bit off-putting for people and gets in the way of their getting in it. So good change agents and good people with the right digital mindset, they're going to get in, they're going to learn, they're going to understand the potential of these technologies to both to disrupt their business, but also to transform their organization, and they're going to lead their employees and lead their organization through that. From courage, the line was looking for courage, and courage for me in this metaphor is someone with the right mindset and the real digital change agent. They just jump right in, right? They don't need their hand held. I've been doing a lot of hand holding the past 2 years. These folks do not need their hand held. They just jump right in and they learn it, they experiment, and they come back and they challenge me and my team on our thinking on digital transformation and what we're doing. And we had some well, I'm not sure if she's in the room, but we've got a few folks in the room, that I would call out for that. And then the heart for me is the representative of the deep passion and belief that these people have that this transformation is absolutely critical for the success of the company and even the survival of the company. And they really take that passion and they take it with them and they energize their teams. If they're leaders, they energize their teams. If they're peers, they help their peers along through the journey. And they're just infectious in their enthusiasm, and they don't let little problems get them down. They just keep going after it, and they just have that passion. So with that, I wanted to kind of show you, we're fortunate to have some folks, and I got them on video, and I thought I'd let them talk.
I think the thing that I'm the most excited about in the transition to Innovia is the opportunity to connect our data systems.
Having all of our technical standards and our digital specs in one spot and having the information flow everywhere else is 100% the right thing to do.
One of the big wins from flowing data automatically is agility and greater speed to market.
If we can make it from one end to the other in Innovia with all of the cross-functional partners in the system, I think that's the win.
With a company as big as P&G, we often struggle with being as agile as the market needs us to be. And digital innovation is really going to allow us to tap into quickly making changes.
We can rotate better, we can keep the inventory levels better, we can supply the factories better.
It's all in the same space, and it eliminates so many quality risks.
What's really exciting is imagining all the possibilities of where that could take us in the future.
It's going to change the way manufacturing sees what we do. It's going to change the way we innovate. It's going to change the way we do work in general.
Is there any questions? If you guys don't ask me one of my folks is going to ask me a really hard one.
So you talked about the gray hair problem.
Yeah.
I think that's an industry-wide problem.
Yes.
Right, with whether they're scared to do the digital transformation or not. How did you guys overcome the extraction of that knowledge that's in their head to get it into the system before they left? Or for those who stay, to still get it into the system?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good thought. And it's a bit of orthogonal to this. So one of the things that we're running a small pilot on is using systems engineering to capture that knowledge in a systems engineering framework. And so we have these senior technologists that have been around 20, 30 years to start to build out those models so that that knowledge is persistent in the system, in a systems engineering framework. But I mean, we're in our infancy on that, but that I feel like is a pretty good tool to use to do that sort of thing. In the back?
I'm sorry if I missed the number earlier in your presentation, but how many people have you ended up touching and asking to change behavior?
18,000, at least 18,000. And we knew all their names, what their role was. I could tell you if they'd taken their training. I could tell you if they had established an account in Innovia, if they had taken their training, and I can tell you how many parts they've created in Innovia to date. I could go back to my computer and pull it up. And we use that with the businesses to say, do you really need 700 people originating specs in your business? Is that really a good idea? Is that the org model that you want to go forward with? And so we use that a lot. We gave them a lot of metrics on what people are really doing in the system, right? Because a lot of people say they need access, but they're not really doing that much in it. And so, yeah, so it was a big group. I mean, it's 18,000, right? Yeah.
So your first slide was showing digital leaders.
Yeah.
Right? So how were these people identified, and how did you make sure they had the right mindset to be those leaders?
So they were appointed by their VP, and if they didn't have the right mindset, we worked really hard to get them there. And I think that's the reality, right? Now, I did have personal conversations with some peers of mine, of folks that they had put on the team, that I joke with people that I spent more time in bars in this project than in all my other projects combined, because this is a big relationship thing, right? And so we would go to the bar and I would say, hey, you know, you've got this person on the team. I don't think they have the mindset that's going to help you lead your organization through this transformation, right? Because it's not my problem, it's your problem. Here's what I think you might want to look like. And by the way, here's somebody you could go get, because I have I know a few people in your organization I think would be really good for this. And when we made those pivots, things just started moving. It was phenomenal.
Was this a full-time job, or was this part of your daily?
We had a mix. Some of the businesses have made a decision to staff someone of a peer of mine as a full-time digital leader, driving digital transformation, not just the PLM stuff, but all the things we're doing in labs, all the things we're doing with consumer, with big data, all of that kind of stuff, bringing that in to drive superior innovation, drive productivity, and reduce cost within the sector. And then we had some that were kind of part-time. And so, yeah, we just worked around that. Yes?
How many different countries do your users sit in? How do you keep up with the cultural variation?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I think we're over 130 countries in our use. I'd have to go and get the metric, but I mean, we're in pretty much every country. And we have a very diverse ecosystem, right? So we have these challenges. Like if you think about a plant in Vietnam, right? The language differences, the cultural differences, even the infrastructure differences around bandwidth and that kind of stuff, and how to make all that work was a real challenge for us. So what we did is each site had a digitization leader. So if you think about this change network that we built, we went to the business, and then the business within it had a team that then they had members of at each site. And we did a couple world tours, not to all the sites, but to some of the bigger sites to kind of explain what was going on. And we dealt with things like translation of of training material, and obviously it becomes unaffordable. People want to do it at first, and then you're like, but you got to sustain that every time we're going to go to 18X at the end of this calendar year, and the screens are going to change. We're going to have to update our training material. If we have to update that in like 20 languages, it's going to be just cost prohibitive. Yeah.
How did you choose your KPIs to measure the impact and your real return on investment?
So we started with a business case around superior innovation a bit. That's harder to measure, but also productivity and cost reduction, and those were pretty easy to define because we could look at roles and we could look at how many people were participating in the system. That kind of stuff was pretty easy to get after. When we got into the bridge conversation, it turned into a BCP. And that actually was a really good way to manage this, because it's like you had to get across it, because then it's a multi-tens of billions dollar MPV project, because if the old system fails, and it was very close to failing, you can't run your business, right? You're literally out of business, or you're back to paper or something. And so it became a BCP, and that really drove some acceleration. The conversation that we're in now is we want to drive a 4X transformation in our core work processes, so to deliver the outcome with half the resources and half the time. And that's the journey we're on. You know, we had some bumps along the way with getting out. Folks are not, you know, we're out, but we're not out as clean as I'd like us to be. And so we have another round of going through and helping people understand how to really leverage the 3D experience and leverage the work process to their advantage. Because we still have people that are trying to run their old work process with the new tools with very sort of unfortunate results. Like, it just doesn't really work that way. But that's a very natural thing for folks to want to do. Yeah, Becca? Business continuity plan. So it's a critical system. We can't run our business without it. Yeah. Any other ones? Yes?
Life in Oz now, do you still have everybody wanting to go back to Kansas, or are people happy to see the benefits and charging? I mean, we're not where I want us to be, but I'm very happy with where we are given the construct of what we just talked about. No one is wanting to go back. Like, we're out, we're pulling the plug, you know, they're over. But they're not over in a way that they're yet achieving this productivity goal that we've set. So I sat in front of the group in January and I said, I don't think you guys feel like you're here. This time next year when we're together, I want to be able to look all of you in the eye. I want you to tell me that you've got 4X transformation in your core work processes. Half the time, half the people. And if you can't do it, that's on you, because it's not going to be on me, because I'm going to do my part. And so we have a whole program now on driving those things. So work process optimization, automation. So automation, we're doing a ton of automations within the platform right now. So we've done 45 automations already, and more to come to just drive that productivity. Yes?
How did you guys dictate the pace of change across all the different business lines? Was there a commitment like up front by everyone, or did you have to get others on board, someone first?
So when we got everybody together and we kind of twisted their arm and to get them across the bridge and got them to agree to that, the next conversation was by when. And my VP said, it's this date, and let the sectors react to it. And then we had sort of a co-creation on what would need to be true to hit that date. Did they think they could do it? And then there was a sort of negotiated settlement of a spectrum around, you know, the date that she wanted. And there's some great stories, because there was one business that was one of the most reticent, the most difficult relationships I ever had with a peer as I started this project. And once we got them into the right mindset and we got them turned around, they were the first ones out. And they would never go back. So one of their folks was actually on the video. They would never go back. But once they were locked into a date, they were locked into a date. And it was formal change management. If you wanted to change it by a day, it was formal change management. And if it was a big enough change, it had to go up to the CEO. And you could explain, why did you need 30 more days to do what everybody else had already been able to do? So we didn't have a lot of those conversations. Yeah.
When you started digital transformation, did you look at your current business processes to map it to the platform, or you took the platform technology processes and map and transform your processes to map?
We did more the former than the latter, right? So we had a business process. We have a high-level business process. We worked that with Dassault on how would you realize that business process as much out of the box as possible. We're probably about 30% custom. There's some things, again, on when you're talking fast-moving consumer goods versus airplanes, there's just some things in the out of the box that didn't give us what we needed for the kind of things that we needed to do. The challenge is that when we went back and we've had folks that struggled on the exit, we went back and looked at what they were doing, they didn't follow the work process we deployed in the specificity. They were still trying to use, in many cases, their old work process or the other thing we found was there was all of these hidden work processes, right? When you go through a big transformation like this, so the other t-shirt I haven't gotten yet, but I want to get, is one that has a goat on it with Inovia on the front, and it's not my fault on the back. Because you wouldn't believe how many problems in the business were blamed on this transformation. Well, we can't do this, and we'd go and meet with them, and we're like, but specs is only one day out of a 14-week process. How can you blame that on us, right? And it's shown a light on so many broken work processes, undocumented work processes, Excel-based workarounds of what the organization was really doing to get the work done that senior leadership has no idea is going on. Absolutely no idea is going on. And so actually the problem is far bigger than we thought it was, and that's why we need to do this second round to kind of go back and get people where they need to be. Yeah.
So Jeff is going to be around for today and tomorrow, so hopefully Jeff, you'll...
Yeah, I'm happy to have additional conversations. I think this is a really, for those of us that are doing this, we all know how hard it is, and I think this is definitely an area, there's not a lot of proprietary here, so I think we could have some very robust conversations, very open to that.